Front Porch podcast, and today I'm here with Leo Hickman of Classy Hippie Tea Company and Broadway Coffee. So thank you so much for your time. I'm really excited to talk to you. Just to get started, can you share a little bit about yourself and how you found yourself here in Oak Park?
Thank you for having me as well on the Front Porch podcast. I'm delighted. So I came to California in 2008, right after the housing crash. And from there, I started to think of what is recession-proof and what does that mean? And from there, I segued into tea.
Into tea.
Mm-hmm.
So what led you to believe that tea is recession-proof?
So as we were looking at different data points and things that are, we found three things, criteria that, we were really looking for. One, that one could help people and be impactful. Secondly, it had to be readily available. And third, it had to be cost efficient. One, to either produce or to sustain. And tea was an herb that produced all of those. It hit all 3 points.
So I know we talked a little bit before we got started, and you've mentioned data a couple times. So what exactly is your background, your history, your education that made you, you know, because I'm like, oh, you're really interested in data.
Yeah. Well, my background is in engineering, so biomedical engineering. Data there proves and shows points of stress. And really, that's what you're looking for when you start businesses. Your survivability depends on how many stress points you're going to hit at what level of speed or urgency or, frequency. And so you can prepare. And I was looking for different stress points that we were going to hit, not just with tea, but in business in general. Like, what is a business that we can do that would be somewhat recession-proof? Medical was one of those things. People are always getting sick.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be in the mortuary business. And so I decided to go into tea.
Okay.
Yep.
So you're a biomedical engineer. What is that?
So there's doctors that work on human bodies, and then there's engineers within the medical frame that we work on all the systems within the hospital.
Got it.
So I like to say we keep the doctors and nurses sane.
Okay, so establishing and developing systems and things.
So computer systems, medical systems, things of that sort.
Okay.
But what I heavily specialized in was radiology.
Okay.
And so ultrasound, CAT scan, MRI, those were the things that was my specialty.
Okay. And so you got from there to looking for something different. Clearly, if you landed on tea, what was the motivation for that?
So I'm also a military veteran. And after September 11th, I went backpacking looking for myself.
All right.
And I spent about 4 years on the road. And while I was on the road, I recognized that I was participating in a ceremony everywhere that I had traveled. But it didn't really resonate with me that it was a ceremony. It was readily available everywhere I went. People had some kind of tea.
Okay.
And so as I get back to the States and I'm trying to figure things out, I fall in California. And California has this thing called herbalist. And they have schools for herbalism. And so I was already working as an engineer, but I had never heard of an herbalist. I had only known Western medicine to that point. And once I got introduced to Eastern forms of medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, Mexican medicine, curandismo, I just never turned back.
What was it that attracted you to this alternative form of medicine?
Those 3 points again. It was readily available, extremely affordable, and most people already had access to it.
Got it. Okay.
Yep.
And so tell me a little bit about then starting your tea business.
Right on. So I went, it was a challenge to start a tea business. So, but I'm sure it is to start any business. You have to, one, build your own confidence and then communicate that confidence in what you're doing. And it just takes time. So for me, in those first few years, one of my mentors told me to choose 10 herbs. And from those 10 herbs, figure out what herbs or what situations you can address with these 10 herbs. Start talking to those people only. And so that's how my first year went, and honestly, that's how the next 10 years go. Every year you pick 10 herbs that you want to start playing with and learning with, and from there you build relationships.
Interesting. So relationships with the herbs or just with the people they benefit, or?
Both.
Both.
Yep, because, herbs have different intensities. There's different ways that you can administer, whether it be a tea, which I love because it's 90% water and it's not as concentrated, versus something like a tincture, which is going to be more concentrated, and you have to play with the levels there.
Yeah.
So
tell me about some of the relationships with people that you formed as you're forming relationships also with the herbs. Is there anything that stands out to you in the first couple years?
I think the number one thing that has really influenced me and been impactful in my walk, I think we've all known through statistics that traditionally women have taken more of a interest in their health care earlier on. Well, now because I'm in this field and I'm talking to different people, I've really had a chance to work on my communication and understanding of where women are coming from with health issues, security issues. The mindset that a woman uses to evaluate certain situations is different than a man's approach in some ways. And so through medical and medicine, I've been able to really be a part of that thought process. And it's been really enlightening.
Is there something specific about that thought process that's different?
Data points again.
Okay.
Because women have been, and not only accepted within going to have regular checkups from almost like the time they're 12, 13. Men, that starts at 40. So there's literally almost 25 extra years of data that a woman's going to have on herself, her body, her awareness of different things and changes.
Got it.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So a woman has both is required to pay closer attention at an earlier age then, and has more experience understanding her body, is what you found.
And I think
that's interesting. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and I wish men paid we're going through just as many hormonal changes and things of that sort, but it hasn't been a part of our education system for a male to pay that close of attention to themselves.
Yeah.
We don't have that. It's not part of our culture. It is for the woman, though. And again, taking me back to tea. Tea was a way that everyone practiced health.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like, oh, I wasn't taught this. No one sat me down in the classroom, which is very often said in American thought. These places, it's been a part of our history. There's a tradition.
Yeah. That's really interesting that from an American perspective, we expect that if we're going to learn, it's going to be in a classroom and someone's going to tell us.
Yep. Or you pay for it.
Or you pay for it.
Yeah.
Or, there's some sort of like formal outline for that, when probably our best learning does not come through.
Most of it hasn't.
Sitting in what as an American we'd consider conventional education.
Yeah, that confidence thing that we were speaking of earlier, I think within the American mindset, if we're consuming and paying for it, then we feel like we've earned it and deserve it.
Okay.
Whereas in other cultures, it's time plays in, and if you're willing to put in the time to sit with someone who knows more than you, that's more respected versus how much money you bring to the table.
Got it.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense, and really, probably the latter is a lot more it's definitely more valuable to sit with someone who's an expert and learn, because there's so much that you can learn that isn't
the intangibles.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, how do you talk about smell in a book, and how does smell influence your salivation, of your glands, or secretion of your glands? Now your mouth is prepping you for sweet or bitter. All this came from smell.
Yeah.
How do you write about that and translate it accurately? So yeah, there's certain things that when you're sitting in storytelling, it's just way more tangible. You can say, did you taste that? Make eye contact, and people are like, yes, I do.
Yeah.
Or no, I don't.
And you really only get that through kind of a hands-on with someone else experience.
Right. I've found that in my studies now that other medicines, other forms, they really utilize all five senses in their approach towards addressing an issue. And so I think that's made so much of a difference
Yeah.
between my studies and some other people.
Well, it's certainly a huge difference, I think, probably from what I've observed and talked to, many of the medical students in the neighborhood, the way that they are learning versus other kinds of medical practice.
Well, and this is another really interesting point, at least to me, right? Because if we step back and look at the system, like doctors are learning the tradition of medicine. Engineers are developing what medicine's going to be. So we're actually on the forefront developing how we're going to engage and interact with each other in the future, how medicines will be administered. And the doctors are, in a way, practicing something that's outdated. And so to communicate that between the two, I believe is the new frontier that we're working on. Whereas up to this point, everything's been about hormones and trying to address it through masculine, feminine, sun, moon, opposites, things of that sort.
Yeah.
Now I think we have so much data through Google and these servers that can hold it. We can search it very quickly. Now it's going to start playing heavily into, are you looking towards something in the future, which will be more preventative medicine? Are you going to take herbs, things of that sort on a regular basis because diabetes runs in your family and you can prevent this? Or are you going to wait until you get the issue and then you have to take cancer medication? Because now you're dealing with something that you knew was coming and you waited. So I think that's the level of awareness that we're moving to with our medicine. Do you want to address this now or later? And it's going to come at a different cost, whether you want to do it now or later.
So as a biomedical engineer, do you see any possibility that some of these more ancient preventative, herbal health, diet, health-based approaches might be circling around and being engaged in Western medicine?
I think it's all possible. And to answer that question more directly, yes, I do believe it's circling back around.
Okay.
But I believe it's circling back around out of our own vanity.
How, explain that.
The economy is costing too much for us to run ourselves and to participate in ourselves. So we're creating robots that can run it for us and allow us to have a level of comfort. We're having to teach these robots how to utilize all five senses so they can communicate with us. So in us building and programming a robot to communicate with us so we can have our level of comfort sustained, we're literally creating something that is more advanced than us because we've never had to be that in touch with ourselves until we built a duplicate. So yeah, I do think it's circling back around. And I think eventually it's going to end up being so advanced, it's going to know us better than we know ourselves, which that's a whole nother AI conversation. But those conversations are there because literally the robots are developing their five senses faster than we've ever thought about it. Again, going back to those numbers of men don't start looking at their health until they're 40. Well, now that we have these robots that we're having to program early on, we're gaining at 15, 25 years. Men are doing this in college, which would be at 20 years old. Still not when a woman is learning about her health in 12, 13, but we've gained quite a bit of time learning starting at 70 or 20. versus 40.
Okay.
So I think that's the vanity that we have, that we're looking for self-preservation. And through our self-preservation, we're going to create these new beings.
Okay. So
That's a wild way around. How do you follow that all right? Okay.
no, I've got you. I'm tracking. What other ventures are you working on? I see you've got your beautiful little garden behind you.
Yes.
You want to talk a little bit about that? And
So the most immediate project that we're working on right now is going to be, as you just mentioned, we're doing hydroponic farming. The game plan is one of these towers feeds a family of 5 for a month. So it's scalable.
Okay.
With every tower that we purchase and maintain, now we can tangibly say this is how many families, this is how many people, this is how it's changed this local economy over a course of 5 or 10 years.
Okay. Again, back to the data.
It has to be data driven in our engineering world.
Yes.
Otherwise, how do you know if that's where we base our successes? You know?
Data. But what led you there to pursuing the hydroponic gardens?
So one of the things that I realized as I'm creating this system around tea and trying to understand the system of tea, I started to understand the system of business.
Okay.
And so tea had those 3 tangibles, but then as I'm looking at the tea, I'm like, well, how do I get it here? Oh man, okay, it's affordable, but it's coming all the way from Asia or Africa or, okay, so the CO2 emissions that I just paid to get it here, the da-da-da-da-da-da. So now there's all these other intangibles that although I was helping someone here locally, I just damaged 10 other people in the process of receiving this product.
Got it.
So to that's how we started looking at other ways that are more sustainable. Those more sustainable ways also just happen to address things that California has been going through for quite some time. Energy crisis, how do we power such a big state? And secondly, water issues and how do we get water to the state? So with hydroponic farming, you use LED light, which consumes very little energy, and then we only use 6 gallons of water per month for a family of 5. So again, the numbers are adding up for this to be sustainable.
Oh, absolutely. 6 gallons for a month, huh?
Yeah. So
Wow.
it's pretty awesome. And that's our immediate. So we'll be working on that for the next 2 to 3 years. Our 10-year project, we're working on growing California tea. So in addition to these herbs, as I said, tea is coming from all over the world. So if we can control that now and grow it here locally, we can absolutely say without a question that there's no pesticides, no GMOs. I can tell you the soil that it came from because it's the soil here locally. And just like honey and bees and things of that sort, when you start having local pollinators and local soil, now that tea plant will serve the local population better because the soil is geared towards our local bodies.
So the same environmental factors
You got
that are affecting our bodies that plant has grown up with that and adapted to it.
Rock on. Yep.
Okay.
That's exactly.
Got it. So what are the challenges of growing, what do you think of growing tea locally?
A lot.
A lot.
So the soil here is resistant. The weather in Northern California is
too hot.
more resistant. It likes acidic soil. It likes mountainous soil. So like somewhere like Tahoe, different places like that, that works a little more in its favor. But here we haven't built into the sides of the mountains.
Yeah.
So because that area is so heavily untouched, we don't necessarily have a tradition of knowing how to farm on the side of a mountain where some of these other cultures have because they have.
Yeah.
So we just don't know how to do it in America unless it's on flat land and we're farming it in rows. farming to us is very linear.
Well, everything to Western cultures is very linear, and Eastern cultures is more of a
Right.
circular thing. So it's just a lack of. It's an issue of education.
Curves.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think in travel and things of that sort.
Got
and
it.
so that's one of my biggest challenges. Because we lack the travel, we lack the education, I'm generally trying to sell an idea to Americans that has been done all over the world for thousands of years. And Americans are looking through books saying, but there's no evidence it works. And I'm like,
And you're working from cultures that often didn't write. I mean, very little was written down.
but they're still standing, like the
Yeah, well, no,
Colosseum.
yeah.
That's
Well,
hydroponics.
Not writing something down doesn't make
Right.
it lesser. It just makes it, when you're trying to communicate
Yeah.
between cultures and mindsets.
Yeah. And ego and pride.
Well, ego and pride, yes.
Yeah.
There's always that. We're
'Cause-
Americans, we know how to do it, right?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Oh, gosh.
And breathe, right?
Oh, there's something we can learn. How do you think you move past that? The general cultural mindset that, we know how to do it and there's nothing we can learn from the others.
The quick answer to this question is I've been prepared for it all my life. It's not always the easiest question because or answer because it has a lot of tangents. And when I say I've been prepared for it all my life, most people who are of color that have grown up in America are used to dealing with a resistant culture. And
Okay.
when you have a culture that's always been resistant to any of your ideas, you're kind of prepped for something like this.
So you've kind of just established habits and methods of working around the resistance,
You got
or
it.
working around it, or working through.
Yep.
I don't know which is better.
I don't think either are better.
Okay.
Yeah, there's just a few ways that you can approach it. You can go through it, over it, under it.
Yeah.
All of them suck.
Yeah. That's
They're just options. Yeah. But we've been dealing with that issue for a long time in the country. But it is one of the challenges.
so you've got your 10-year plan for what are your
I
next?
have a 20-year
You
plan.
have a 20-year plan. Okay.
Because people in space are going to need good tea as well.
So what are your next steps in your immediate plan for
Well,
yourself?
What's
and your
really
business?
interesting is now that we've learned how to grow this with very little water, we need to bring it back alive.
Okay.
So literally, people in space are going to need nutrients, and they're going up to space longer and longer. And now we're also doing civilian flights. They're still going to need nutrients while they're there.
Got
How
it.
do we get them this nutrients? It's going to come from somehow giving this very little water to keep it alive, and then being able to store a little water to bring it back to life, so the nutrient content will be there once you're in space. How do you make that cycle happen seamlessly? Almost like us putting food into a microwave. We don't even think about it. It's warming it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're planning for people moving to space, and you're thinking big.
I'm just thinking next.
Okay.
I think we're obviously going there. They're putting a lot of energy and money into it.
What do you think that is?
Why?
Yeah.
Ego.
Okay.
We've destroyed ours, so we're going to look for something else.
It seems like it might be better to look at ways to rehabilitate ours, since we've found that the world is resilient.
It's not our culture
It's
to
not.
fix. It's our culture to tear down and rebuild.
Yeah.
It's just our culture.
But it's not everyone's culture
No, but we have the money and the guns. So
for now. Okay.
Yeah. So we kind of influence
Got it.
the rest of the cultures.
You think there's any hope for rehabilitating our culture?
We don't have a culture of rehabilitation.
Okay. Well, no, we don't. But do you think there's any way to bend
No, because we
to
don't
better
practice
shape?
it.
What do you mean?
It would almost be like, do you think you're ever going to become a great swimmer by jogging more?
Okay.
Sure, you're in shape. Sure, you have endurance, but you've never practiced to swim. You've practiced to run.
Yeah.
So you're training for a different sport, which your muscles are going to realign and construct differently.
Got it.
So yeah, you're still an athlete, but it doesn't mean that you can participate in a swimming competition. And so that's where my answer is with hope.
Okay.
I don't believe we're practicing a culture of hope.
Got it.
You know what I mean? I think we practice a culture of resilience. And when you look for resilience, you're looking for something to resist. And that's always been the American story. We resist and we overcome. Even if we don't have an opponent, we will find something to resist.
Oh, that's so pessimistic.
Or is it factual?
Well, no, I agree that,
Yeah.
we do not have a culture of rehabilitation or healing. But I would hope that maybe if there are enough of us who did something differently, we could change that, because it is possible.
I would love
Cultures
it.
have changed. I mean, it would be nice to hope that maybe this all doesn't have to crash and burn for it to go differently.
I absolutely know that it does not have to. There's just no data points showing that humans have ever chosen the other path.
Got it.
All the data points show us tearing down to rebuild. All the data points. So I'm hopeful, but the percentage is very low. But I am extremely hopeful. It's possible. But the percentage of that possibility is just low.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if it would be nice to think that maybe we could choose to tear down what is destroying rather than tear down, continuing to tear down what's good to rebuild something that may or may not be better. But
We keep rebuilding Vegas.
I know.
We do. We enjoy it. We pay year after year for the new attractions. There's more going on in the desert? What? Have they figured out water yet? No, but
No,
there's
they
another
haven't.
building. Which, guess what?
What?
All that concrete. You've seen things be built before. They have to water it down because of the
Yep.
dust.
Yes.
All those workers takes what?
Water.
All these things using up this resource. But you said there's a shortage.
There is.
And I can't tell by the way that you guys are rehabilitating the land.
No.
You said it was a shortage, and yet you're building on it.
We are not living as though we are nearly out of water.
We live in hope.
We live in hope, but maybe we need to redirect our hope
Our actions.
and our actions. Well, our hope and our actions, because hoping without doing anything isn't,
It's flawless.
gonna get us
It
anywhere.
always wins. Hoping without action always wins. It makes for a great conversation.
Absolutely does. So we are about running out of time. Is there?
It was getting good.
It is getting good. So I wonder if you have any concluding thoughts or anything else you would like to share with our neighbors about yourself and your vision.
Absolutely. Come get this tea, come get this coffee, because there's no one else doing it like we are. And when I say it, not doing it like we are, that's not ego. I truly mean that there's nothing coming out of the ground that is going to compare to what we're doing in our communities and our bodies and within our families.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Rock on. Thank you.